Podcast Talk.
Learn English naturally.
Stop fixing everything. There's something we almost never talk about: the habit of fixing everything, every feeling, every bad day, every uncomfortable moment. We rush to solve, explain, improve, even when nothing is actually broken. And the strange part is, the more we try to fix life, the more tired we feel. Because not everything needs a solution. Some things just need space.
I used to think being helpful meant fixing things fast. Someone complains, I give advice. Someone feels bad, I offer a solution. But over time, I noticed something. People didn't always want answers. Sometimes they just wanted to be heard. And every time I rushed to fix it, the conversation quietly died.
Yes, and I think that's why so many conversations feel exhausting now. We're not listening, we're preparing fixes, even with ourselves. We feel sad and think, how do I stop this? We feel stuck and ask, what's wrong with me? But maybe nothing is wrong. Maybe it's just a moment that doesn't need to be repaired.
I really started noticing this at work, actually. Someone would say, I'm overwhelmed, or I can't keep up. And almost instantly, the room would shift into fixing mode. People jump in with tips, systems, productivity hacks, as if emotions are bugs in the system. But the truth is, being overwhelmed is often a normal response to unrealistic expectations, constant pressure, and no real pause. And when we rush to fix it, we skip the most human part, acknowledging that what they're feeling makes sense.
Yes, and it happens outside of work too, with friends, with family, even in relationships. Someone opens up, and instead of listening, we start searching for the right answer. But most of the time, people aren't asking to be fixed. They're asking to be understood. And when we constantly try to solve emotions, we send a quiet message that feelings are inconvenient, something to get rid of instead of something to sit with.
I've caught myself doing this with my own life, feeling tired and immediately asking, how do I optimize this? Feeling bored and thinking, what habit do I need to add? As if rest, boredom, or uncertainty are problems to eliminate. But sometimes those moments are signals, not mistakes. Signals that you need space, no, not structure. And when you stop fixing everything, you actually start hearing what your life is telling you.
That's such an important shift because fixing feels productive, listening feels passive. But listening to yourself and to others is often the hardest thing to do. It requires patience. It requires staying with discomfort instead of escaping it through action. And the irony is, when we stop fixing, clarity tends to appear on its own.
Exactly. Not every feeling needs a label. Not every moment needs improvement. Some days are heavy simply because life is heavy. And when we allow that, we stop wasting energy on unnecessary problems. We stop buying stress we don't need. And that's when things start to feel lighter. Not because they're fixed, but because they're accepted.
I had to learn this the hard way. There was a period when I felt constantly tired, unmotivated, and slightly anxious. And instead of asking myself what I needed, I treated it like a project. I tried to fix it with routines, discipline, morning habits, productivity books, and nothing worked. Because the problem wasn't my schedule, the problem was that I never allowed myself to feel unfinished. I believed every uncomfortable emotion meant I was doing life wrong. But some days are not meant to be productive or inspiring. Some days are meant to be quiet, slow, even confusing. And when you stop trying to repair those days, you stop fighting yourself. That's when energy slowly comes back, not from effort, but from permission.
I relate to that so much. For me, it showed up in conversations. If someone was upset, I felt responsible to make it better, like silence meant failure. So I filled every pause with advice, logic, solutions. But I realized something uncomfortable. Fixing was my way of avoiding discomfort, not theirs, mine. Sitting with someone's feelings felt unsafe because I didn't know how to just be present. Once I stopped fixing, conversations became slower but deeper. The people stayed, and I stopped feeling exhausted after every interaction. Because presence costs less energy than control.
That's such an important point. Fixing often feels generous, but it's not always respectful. It assumes something is wrong before asking if help is wanted. And when we apply that mindset to ourselves, we turn our inner world into a constant problem solving session. No wonder we feel drained. Life isn't a system that needs constant optimization, it's a process that needs room to breathe. When you stop fixing every emotion, you start trusting yourself more. And trust changes how heavy everything feels.
I think a lot of us confuse responsibility with control. We feel like if we don't fix things immediately, we're being careless, lazy, or emotionally distant. But real responsibility sometimes looks like restraint, like not jumping in, like allowing a situation to exist without shaping it right away. I remember times when I kept pushing myself to solve my life, and all it did was create pressure on top of pressure. Nothing moved forward. I was just exhausted. And once I stopped trying to control every outcome, things didn't fall apart. They actually became clearer.
Yes. And there's also this quiet fear underneath fixing, the fear that if we stop fixing, we'll lose momentum or fall behind. But that fear is learned. We weren't born thinking rest was dangerous. Somewhere along the way, we were taught that calm equals stagnation. So we keep creating problems to feel useful. But peace doesn't mean you're stuck. Sometimes it means you finally stopped running. And when you allow that, you realize how many problems you were carrying that were never yours to begin with.
I've started asking myself a different question lately, Emma. Not, how do I fix this? But, is this actually my responsibility right now? Because a lot of things feel urgent simply because they're loud. Some messages, opinions, expectations, emotional reactions from other people. And if you respond to all of them, your day disappears. I noticed that when I pause and don't react immediately, most of these problems resolve themselves. Or they turn out to be someone else's process, not mine. And that pause, how that moment of not fixing, protects my energy in a way no productivity system ever did.
Yes, and that pause is uncomfortable at first because we're used to equating action with value. If we're not fixing, helping, improving, we feel like we're wasting time. But that discomfort is often just withdrawal from constant mental noise. I remember moments when I didn't rush to solve something and clarity arrived on its own, not because I forced it but because I finally gave it space. And that taught me something important. Not every problem needs my attention to disappear.
What surprised me most was how much lighter my days became. Not because fewer things happened, but because I stopped reacting to everything as if it needed my input. I used to feel responsible for moods in a room, for silence and conversations, for tension that wasn't mine. And once I stepped back, nothing collapsed. People handled their own emotions. Situations unfolded naturally. I realized I had been carrying weight that I was never asked to carry, and letting it go didn't make me careless. It made me present in a healthier way.
That's such a relief when it finally clicks, because so many of us live in constant readiness mode, like something bad will happen if we don't intervene. But life doesn't need supervision every second. Some moments need patience, not management. And when you stop fixing, you start noticing patterns. You see what truly needs your attention and what just wants a reaction. That distinction alone can change how overwhelming life feels.
I think a lot of exhaustion today comes from emotional multitasking. We're thinking about our own lives while managing everyone else's expectations at the same time. And that's not sustainable. Once I stopped fixing other people's discomfort, I had more clarity for my own decisions. Less noise, less second guessing. It didn't make me distant. It made my choices more intentional.
I also realized how often we confuse being needed with being valued. When you're always fixing, people get used to your involvement, your advice, your energy, your constant availability. And at some point, you don't even notice how much of your attention is being spent on things that don't move your life forward at all. I remember days when I felt completely drained without having done anything meaningful for myself, not because the day was busy, but because my focus was scattered across other people's problems. Once I stopped stepping in automatically, I finally had space to notice what I actually needed. And that changed how my days felt from the inside.
That really resonates with me. There's this invisible pressure to always be on, to respond, to react, to prove you're what engaged. But constant engagement isn't the same as meaningful presence. When I started pulling my energy back, I noticed how much quieter my mind became. Decisions felt clearer. Conversations felt more intentional. And the most surprising part? Nothing important was lost. What disappeared were the unnecessary worries, the imagined responsibilities, the problems I had been buying without realizing it. And that's when time started feeling like mine again.
There's also something freeing about admitting you don't have to have an answer. For a long time, I thought maturity meant clarity at all times. Like you're supposed to know what to do, what to say, how to respond. But real maturity, I think, is knowing when to pause, when to let a situation breathe, when to say, I don't know yet, and not rush past that space. Because rushing creates fake certainty, and fake certainty creates more problems later. When you stop fixing, you give yourself permission to grow into answers instead of forcing them.
I've noticed how that changes relationships too. When you don't rush to fix, people show you more of themselves. They slow down, they think out loud, they find their own words, and the connection becomes more real. Fixing creates distance without us realizing it, because it puts you above the situation. Presence puts you beside it. And that shift from fixer to witness completely changes how conversations feel. They stop being transactional. They start being human.
And being human means allowing mess, allowing uncertainty, allowing days that don't resolve neatly. When you stop buying every problem, you also stop demanding constant progress from yourself. You learn to live inside the moment you're in instead of treating it like a mistake. And slowly, life stops feeling like something you need to manage. It starts feeling like something you're allowed to experience. That's a quiet shift, but it changes everything.
I think one of the hardest things to accept is that not everything in life is meant to feel resolved. We're taught to look for closure everywhere in conversations, decisions, even emotions. But real life rarely gives clean endings. When I stopped pushing for resolution, I noticed I had more patience, not just with other people, but with myself. Moments felt less tense. I wasn't constantly waiting for the right feeling to arrive. I could sit inside uncertainty without panicking, and that alone reduced so much unnecessary stress.
Yes, and patience changes how we measure our days. Instead of asking, "What did I fix today?" you start asking, "What did I notice? What did I understand? What did I allow?" Those questions don't create pressure, they create awareness. And awareness is surprisingly calming because once you're aware, you can choose where your energy goes. You're no longer reacting to everything that asks for attention. You're responding to what actually matters.
I used to end days feeling strangely unsatisfied, even when I was busy, even when I was productive. And I couldn't understand why. Now I see it clearly. I was spending my time solving things that didn't belong to me. Other people's emotions, other people's expectations, other people's urgency. Once I stopped buying those problems, my days didn't get shorter, they got fuller because my attention was finally mine.
That fullness is such a good word for it because peace doesn't always feel exciting, but it feels spacious. You can think more clearly, you can listen more deeply, you can enjoy moments without asking what they need to become next. And when you live that way, you stop feeling behind. You stop feeling like life is passing you by because you're actually present inside it.
I've been thinking a lot about how easily urgency tricks us. Everything shows up sounding important: notifications, requests, expectations, even other people's emotions. And when everything feels urgent, you stop choosing. You just react. I notice that once I stopped answering immediately, some things solved themselves. Others disappeared completely. They weren't real problems, just noise competing for attention. And the things that actually mattered stayed quiet, waiting patiently. That pause taught me something simple but powerful. Not every demand deserves a response. And choosing not to react is sometimes the most responsible move.
That idea of choice is so important because when you're constantly reacting, your days don't feel like they belong to you. They feel borrowed, pulled apart by other people's urgency, by habits you never questioned, by problems you didn't consciously accept. I noticed that when I slowed down, my inner dialogue changed too. I stopped asking, "What do I need to fix next?" and started asking, "What actually deserves my attention today?" That single question created calm. Not instantly, but consistently. And that calm made everything else easier to handle.
It also reshaped how I see progress. I used to think progress meant constant movement, constant effort, constant improvement. But now I see that progress can also look like restraint, like choosing not to engage, like letting a situation unfold without interference. Some of the best decisions I've made came from not acting right away, from giving myself time to feel, to think, to observe. And that space didn't slow my life down. It made it more intentional, less noise, more direction.
If this conversation resonated with you, take a moment to notice what you're carrying right now. Which problems did you consciously choose, and which ones just showed up and stayed? You're allowed to put some of them down. If you enjoyed listening, subscribe to OffScript English and tell us in the comments what topics you'd like us to talk about next. Thanks for spending this time with us.